Hello, good evening everyone. I am Generous B. Sabeliano with my group mates Imee Silva and Vienna Lee Tampus. Tonight we will tackle about the Unit 4 Lesson 2, which is all about the K to 12 Enhanced Basic Education, its features, and the implementing of rules and regulations of Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. So, without further ado, let's get started. The features of K-12 Enhanced Basic Education are: first, strengthening early childhood education or universal kindergarten. Second one is making the curriculum relevant to learners or contextualization and enhancements. Then third is building proficiency or mother tongue based multilingual education. And lastly, ensuring integrated and seamless learning, which is known as the spiral progression. And now let's talk about the rule number 1, the general provisions. Section 1. These rules and regulations shall be referred to as the Implementing Rules and Regulations or IRR of the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013 or the Republic Act number 10533. Section 2 of Rule number 1. The scope and application. The provisions of these implementing rules and regulations shall primarily apply to all public and private basic educational institutions and learning centers. These implementing rules and regulations shall also apply to higher education institutions, technical vocational institutions, duly recognized organizations, acting as teacher education institutions, and foundations. Section 3. Declaration of Policy. These implementing rules and regulations shall be interpreted in light of the Declaration of Policy found in Section 2 of the Act. Section 4 of Rule number 1. Definition of terms. First is the Act. Refers to the Republic Act number 10533 entitled An Act Enhancing the Philippine Basic Education System by strengthening its curriculum and increasing the number of years for basic education, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, otherwise known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. Next is the Learning Center. Refers to a physical space to house learning resources and facilities of a learning program for out-of-school youth and adults. So it is a venue for face-to-face learning activities and other learning opportunities for community development and improvement of people's quality of life. This may also be referred to as Community Learning Center, authorized or recognized by the DepEd. Then, learner refers to a pupil or student or to a learner in the alternative learning system. Then, mother language or first language refers to the language or languages first learned by a child, which he or she identifies with or is identified as a native language user of by others, which he or she knows best or uses most. This includes Filipino Sign Language used by individuals with pertinent disabilities. The regional or native language refers to the traditional speech variety or variety of Filipino Sign Language existing in a region, area, or place. And lastly, non-DepEd public school refers to a public school offering basic education operated by an agency of the national government other than the DepEd or by a local government unit. Section 5 of Rule number 1. The Basic Education. Pursuant to Section 3 of the Act, basic education is intended to meet basic learning needs which provides the foundation in which subsequent learning can be based. So it encompasses kindergarten, elementary and secondary education as well as alternative learning systems for out-of-school learners and those with special needs under Section 8 of this implementing rules and regulations. Section 6 of Rule Number 1. The Enhanced Basic Education Program. So this section talks about the purposes of these implementing rules and regulations and pursuant to Section 4 of the Act. The Enhanced Basic Education Program encompasses at least 1 year of kindergarten education, 6 years of elementary education, and 6 years of secondary education. In that sequence, secondary education includes 4 years of junior high school and 2 years of senior high school education. The Enhanced Basic Education Program may likewise be delivered through the alternative learning system. And DepEd may allow private educational institutions flexibility in adapting the program provided that they comply with the DepEd prescribed minimum standards consistent with the Act. Section 7 of Rule Number 1. Compulsory Basic Education, where it shall be compulsory for every parent or guardian or other persons having custody of a child to enroll such child in basic education, irrespective of learning delivery modes and systems, until its completion, as provided for by existing laws, rules, and regulations. Section 8 of Rule Number 1. Inclusiveness of enhanced basic education, which mean that the implementation of programs designed to address the physical, intellectual, psychosocial, and cultural needs of learners, which shall include but not limited to the following. First, programs for the gifted and talented. This refers to the comprehensive programs for the gifted and talented learners in all levels of basic education. Second, programs for learners with disabilities. This refers to the comprehensive programs designed for learners with disabilities, which may be home, school, center, or community-based. Third, Madrasa program. This refers to the comprehensive program using the madrasa curriculum prescribed by DepEd in a coordination with the Commission on Muslims for Muslim learners in public and private schools. Fourth, Indigenous Peoples Education Program. This refers to the program that supports education initiatives undertaken through formal, non-formal, and informal modalities with emphasis on any of, but not limited to, the key areas of indigenous knowledge systems and practices and community history, indigenous languages, indigenous learning system, and community life cycle-based curriculum and assessment, educational goals, aspirations, and competencies specific to the indigenous cultural community, engagement of elders and other community members in the teaching learning process, assessment and management of initiative, recognition and continuing practices of the community's ILS, and the learning responsibilities of indigenous cultural community. And lastly, programs for learners under difficult circumstances. This refers to the timely and responsive programs for learners under difficult circumstances, such as but not limited to geographic isolation, chronic illness, displacement due to armed conflict, urban settlement or disasters, child abuse, and child labor practices. Section 9. Acceleration. Acceleration of learners in public and private basic educational institutions shall be allowed consistent with DepEd rules and regulations. Rule number 2. Curriculum. Section 10. Basic Education Curriculum Development. In the development of the basic education curriculum, the DepEd shall be guided by the following. First, formulation and design. Pursuant to Section 5 of the Act, the DepEd shall formulate the design and details of the enhanced basic education curriculum. The DepEd shall work with the CHED and TESDA to craft harmonized basic, tertiary, and technical vocational education curricula for Filipino graduates to be locally and globally competitive. Second, standards and principles. The DepEd shall adhere to the following standards and principles when appropriate in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum. First, the curriculum shall be learner-centered, inclusive, and developmentally appropriate. Second, the curriculum shall be relevant, responsive, and research-based. Third, curriculum shall be gender and culture sensitive. Fourth, curriculum shall be contextualized and global. Fifth, the curriculum shall use pedagogical approaches that are constructivist, inquiry-based, reflective, collaborative, and integrative. Sixth, the curriculum shall adhere to the principles and framework of mother tongue-based multilingual education. 7. The curriculum shall use the spiral progression approach to ensure mastery of knowledge and skills after each level, and the curriculum shall be flexible enough to enable and allow schools to localize, indigenize, and enhance the same based of their perspective, educational and social context. Continuation to Section 10, the production and development of materials, in which locally produced teaching and learning materials shall be encouraged. The approval of this material shall be devolved to the regional and division education unit in accordance with national policies and standards. Then, medium of teaching and learning. So, the basic education shall be delivered in languages understood by the learners, as language plays a strategic role in shaping the formative years of learners. And lastly, the stakeholder participation. To achieve an enhanced and responsive basic education curriculum, the DepEd shall undertake consultations with other national government agencies and other stakeholders including Department of Labor and Employment, the Professional Regulation Commission, private and public schools associations, national student organizations, national teacher organizations, parents, teachers associations, chambers of commerce, and other industry associations on matters affecting the concerned stakeholders. Section 11. Curriculum Consultative Committee, where it shall be created to be chaired by the DepEd Secretary or his or her duly authorized representative, and with members composed of a representative from each from the CHED, TESDA, DOLI, PRC, and Department of Science and Technology, and a representative from business chambers such as the Information Technology, Business Process Outsourcing Industry Association, and the Consultative Committee shall oversee the review and evaluation of the implementation of the enhanced basic education curriculum and may recommend to the DepEd the formulation of necessary refinements in the curriculum. Rule number 3. Teacher qualifications, training, and continuing professional development. It is stated in Section 12 that teacher education and training to ensure that the enhanced basic education program meets the demand for quality teachers and school leaders. The DepEd, CHED, and TESDA shall conduct teacher education and training programs in collaboration with relevant partners in government, academe, industry, and non-governmental organizations. Such professional development programs shall be initiated, conducted, and evaluated regularly throughout the year to ensure constant upgrading of teacher skills. Teacher education and training programs shall be included but shall not be limited to: first, in-service training on content and pedagogy. Second, training of new teachers. Third, training of school leadership. Fourth, training of alternative learning system coordinators, instructional managers, mobile teachers, and learning facilitators. Section 13. Hiring of other teachers. The DepEd and private educational institutions shall hire as may be relevant to the particular subject. First, graduates of science, mathematics, statistics, engineering, music, and other degree courses needed to teach in their specialized subjects in elementary and secondary education, with shortages in qualified applicants who have passed the licensure examination for teachers.
Ensuring integrated and seamless learning, spiral progression. First, basic concepts, general concepts are first learned. Second, more complex and sophisticated version of the basic, general concepts are then rediscovered in the succeeding grades. Third, this strengthens retention and enhances mastery of topics and skills as they are revisited and consolidated time and again. This also allows learners to learn topics and skills appropriate to their developmental and cognitive skills. Rule number 4, private educational institutions. Section 14, reasonable supervision and regulation. As a matter of policy laid down in Article 14, Section 5 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, the state recognizes the complementary rules of public and private institutions in the educational system and shall exercise reasonable supervision and regulation of all educational institutions. Section 15, issuance and revocation of permits and or recognition of private senior high schools. The DepEd shall regulate the offering of senior high school in private educational institutions. Private educational institution may only offer senior high schools when so authorized by the DepEd. The DepEd shall prescribe the guidelines on the issuance and revocation of permits and or recognition of senior high schools. Section 16, specialization in private senior high school. Private educational institution may offer specialization in senior high school that are essential to the economic and social development of the nation, region, or locality. Local planning in the development of educational policies and programs shall be encouraged consistent with the state policy to take into account regional and sectoral needs and conditions. Rule number 5, career guidance and counseling advocacy. Section 17, career guidance and counseling programs consistent with the Section 9 of the Act to properly guide the students towards becoming productive and contributing individuals through informed career choices. The DepEd, in coordination with the DOLI, TESDA, CHED, PRC, and NYC, industry associations, professional associations, and other relevant stakeholders, shall pursue programs that expose students to the world and value of work, and develop the capability of career counselors and advocates to guide the students and equip them with the necessary life skills and values. Section 18, career advocacy activities. Career advocacy activities refer to activities that will guide secondary level students in choosing the career tracks that they intend to pursue. Career advocacy activities involve provision of career information and experiences, advising, coordinating, and making referrals, and may include but are not limited to career talks, career and job fairs, parents' orientations, and seminar workshops on career decision making. Section 19, Career Advocates. Notwithstanding provision of Section 27 of Republic Act No. 9258, otherwise known as the Guidance and Counseling Act of 2004, career advocates shall be allowed to conduct career advocacy activities for secondary level students of the schools where they are currently employed, provided that they undergo appropriate capacity building programs developed and implemented by the DepEd. In the coordination with the DOLI, TESDA, CHED, PRC, NYC, students' organizations, industry associations, guidance and counseling associations, professional associations, and other relevant stakeholders. Career advocacy may be conducted by career advocates and peer facilitators, consistent with Section 9 of the Act. Career advocates refer to career and employment guidance counselors who are not registered and licensed guidance counselors. Career advocates include homeroom advisors and teachers of all learning areas who will implement career advocacy activities. Peer facilitators or secondary level students trained to assess career advocates in implementing career advocacy activities. Section 20 Role of the DepEd. The DepEd shall integrate career concept in the curriculum and undertake teaching in relevant learning areas, conduct career assessments, conduct regular career advocacy activities, conduct continuous professionalization and capacity building of guidance counselors, career advocates, and peer facilitators, develop or accredit training programs on career advocacy, establish a career advocacy unit, and provide adequate office space in high schools and designate guidance supervisors at the division level and career advocates at the school level. Rule number 6, EGASP beneficiaries and other financing arrangements with private educational institutions and non-DepEd public schools. Section 21, Expansion of EGASP beneficiaries. Pursuant to Section 10 of the Act, the DepEd shall develop programs of assistance that will extend the benefits accorded by Republic Act No. 8545. or the Expanded Government Assistance for Students and Teachers in Private Education Act to qualified students enrolled in senior high school. Section 22, Criteria for Assistance to Qualified Students. The programs of assistance shall be made available primarily to students who completed junior high school in public schools, taking into account the income background and financial needs of students, available capacities of public, private, and non-DepEd public schools in the locality, socio-economic needs of regions, overall performance of private and non-DepEd public schools, as well as the geographic spread and size of the students' population. Section 23, Forms and Amount of Assistance. The forms of assistance that may be provided by the DepEd may include any of the following: a voucher system where government issues a coupon directly to students to enable them to enroll in eligible private educational institutions or non-DepEd public schools of their choice under a full or partial tuition of schooling subsidy. Education service contracting where the government enters into contracts with private educational institutions or non-DepEd public schools to shoulder the tuition and other fees of high school students who shall enroll in private high schools under this program. Management contracts where government enters into contractual arrangements with private educational institutions or non-DepEd public schools to manage the day-to-day operations of public schools under agreed performance targets. Forms of assistance provided under Public Act No. 8545 and other forms of financial arrangements consistent with the principles of public-private partnerships. The DepEd shall take into account the ability of program beneficiaries to cover tuition differentials, if any, in setting the amount of the voucher, ESC or other forms of assistance. The amount of assistance to be given by the government shall not exceed the determined per student cost in public schools. Section 24, Participating Schools. Private educational institutions or non-DepEd public schools and other potential providers of basic learning needs that may be authorized to offer senior high schools are eligible to participate in programs of assistance as may be applicable under the EGASP program and other financial arrangements formulated by the DepEd and DBM based on the principles of public and private partnership. The continued participation of said providers in the EGASP program and other financial arrangement is subject to their meeting minimum requirements and standards, including student performance as determined by the DepEd. To promote partnership and greater cooperation between public and private educational institutions, government will take into account existing and potential capacities of private educational institutions in expanding public school capacity. Section 25, Implementation Mechanism. The DepEd may enter into contractual arrangement or establish new mechanism for the design, administration, and supervision of programs of assistance or aspect thereof subject of the approval of the appropriate government agencies. For this purpose, the DepEd shall A. Issue the appropriate guidelines for the implementation of the programs of assistance. B. Ensure transparency and accountability in the implementation of programs of assistance. C. Implement information and advocacy programs to inform the general public and ensure greater participation and availment of the programs of assistance. And D. Undertake periodic reviews of the program features and make adjustments as necessary to ensure the successful and effective and sustainable implementation of the program. The program feature shall include, among others, amount of subsidy, number of grantees, eligibility of requirements, and performance of participating schools. Section 26, Funding Requirement. The budgetary requirement of the programs under this rule shall be ensured by the national government. The DepEd shall encourage private and corporate donors to support the programs of assistance in this section under the framework of Republic Act No. 8525, entitled An Act Establishing and Adopt a School Program, providing incentives thereof and for other purposes, and other relevant laws and policies. Section 27, Time Frame. The DepEd shall implement the programs provided in this rule no later than the start of school year 2016-2017. Section 28, Additional Beneficiaries. The DepEd may develop similar programs of assistance for kindergarten and elementary pupils and alternative learning system learners in accordance with specific objectives, taking into account the need and capacities of public and private educational institutions.
Rule number 7. Transitory Provisions. Under Section 29, private basic educational institutions transition to the Enhanced Basic Education Program. The DepEd shall ensure the smooth transition of private elementary and high schools in the country that are not aligned with the Enhanced Basic Education Program. Private educational institutions or a group thereof shall develop their plans detailing how to transition from their current basic education system to the Enhanced Basic Education Program. The DepEd shall provide the appropriate guidelines on the evaluation of the transition plans.
Private educational institutions offering 12 to 13 years of basic education prior to the enactment of this act shall submit to the DepEd their transition plans within 12 months from the effectivity of this IRR, subject to the guidelines that will be issued by the DepEd. Section 30, Implementation Mechanism and Strategies. Pursuant to Section 12 of the Act, the DepEd, CHED, and TESDA shall formulate the appropriate strategies and mechanism needed to ensure the smooth transition from the existing 10 years basic education cycle to the enhanced basic education program. The strategies may cover, among others, changes in physical infrastructure, human resource, organizational, and structural concerns, bridging models, linking secondary education competencies, and the entry requirements of new tertiary curricula and partnerships between the government and other entities. Modeling for senior high school may be implemented in selected schools to simulate the transition process and provide concrete data for the transition plan. Following the guidelines set by the DepEd, the results of the senior high school modeling program may be considered in nationwide implementation of senior high school program in school year 2016-2017. 30.1 Partnership with HEIS and TVIS to manage the initial implementation of Enhanced Basic Education Program and mitigate the expected multi-year low enrollment turnout for HEIS and TVIS starting school year 2016-2017. The DepEd shall engage in partnerships with HEIS and TVIS for the utilization of latter's human and physical resources and issue relevant guidelines on such partnerships. Moreover, the DepEd, CHED, TESDA, TVIS, and HEIS shall coordinate closely with one another to implement strategies that ensure the academic, physical, financial, and human resource capabilities of HEIS and TVIS to provide educational and training services for graduates of the Enhanced Basic Education Program to ensure that they are not adversely affected, that the faculty of HEIS and TVIS allowed to teach students of secondary education under Section 8 of the Act shall be given priority in hiring for the duration of transition period. 30.2 Financing Framework for State Universities and Colleges during the transition period. The CHED and DBM shall review the financing policy framework for state universities and colleges in light of the Act with the end in view of optimizing use of government resources for education, the results of which shall be covered by a joint administrative issuance. 30.3 Effects of initial implementation of the Enhanced Basic Education Program on industry human resource requirements. The DOLE, CHED, DepEd, TESDA, and PRC in coordination with industry associations and chambers of commerce shall develop a contingency plan not later than the start of school year 2015-2016 to mitigate the effects of Enhanced Basic Education Program with respect to a potential reduction or absence of college graduates to meet the human resource requirements of industry. The plan shall contain mitigation strategies for industries to adjust their employment policies as deemed necessary and expedient, and may include adoption of other relevant programs or appropriate qualifications. Section 31 Labor and Management Rights. In the implementation of the Act, including the transition period, the rights of labor as provided in Constitution, the Civil Service Rules and Regulations, Labor Code of the Philippines, and existing collective agreements, as well as the prerogatives of management shall be respected. The DOLE, DepEd, CHED, and TESDA shall promulgate the appropriate joint administrative issuance within 60 days from the effectivity of this IRR to ensure the sustainability of the private and public educational institutions and the promotion and protection of the rights, interests, and welfare of teaching and non-teaching personnel. For this purpose, the DOLE shall convene a technical panel with representatives from the DepEd, CHED, TESDA, and representatives from both teaching and non-teaching personnel organizations and administrators for the educational institutions.
Hi, my name is Vienna. The fifth feature is gearing up for the future. First, ensuring college readiness. It is important working with CHED to ensure alignment of core and applied subjects to the college readiness standards and new general education curriculum. It develops appropriate specialization subjects for the academic, sports, arts and design, and tactical vocational livelihood tracks. Second, strengthening TVET integration in seniors high school. It is important working with CHED to integrate TVET skills, competencies and qualifications, and TLE in junior high school and tactical vocational livelihood tracks in senior high school. It ensures that any grade 10 finisher and all grade 12 TVL graduates are eligible for TESTA competency or qualification assessments. It prepares learning resources that are consistent and promulgated training regulations. Lastly, it develops appropriate inset and certification programs for TLE teachers. The last feature is nurturing the holistically developed Filipino. After going through kindergarten, the enhanced elementary and junior high curriculum, and a specialized senior high program, every K-12 graduate will be ready to go into different paths, maybe further education, employment, or entrepreneurship. Every graduate will equip with information, media, and technology skills, learning and innovation skills, effective communication skills, and a life and career skills. Here is a diagram table about the K-12 curriculum. It composes of elementary, junior high, and senior high program. In elementary, we have the kindergarten and grades 1 to 6. In junior high school, we have grades 7 to 10. Grade 7 to 8 has exploratory TLE, while grades 9 to 10 has specialized TLE. Lastly, the senior high program. Senior high program has 4 tracks: the academic track, sports, arts and design, and the technical vocational livelihood track. These tracks orally has core subjects, and we have these academic strands like GAS, STEM, ABM, and UMS. While in TVL, we have 4 different majors. We have home economics, agri-fishery, industrial arts, and ICT. Rule number 8. Joint Congressional Oversight Committee. Section 33, Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Enhanced Basic Education Program. The Joint Congressional Oversight Committee was created under Section 13 of the Act, shall be composed of 5 members each from the Senate and from the House, including chairs of the committees on education, arts and culture, and finance of both houses. The membership of the committee for every house shall have at least 2 opposition or minority members. Rule number 9. Mandatory Evaluation and Review. Section 34, Mandatory Evaluation and Review. By the end of school year 2014 to 2015, the DepEd shall conduct a mandatory review and submit a midterm report to Congress as to the status of implementation of the Enhanced Basic Education Program in terms of closing the following current shortages: teachers, classrooms, textbooks, seats, toilets, and other shortages that should be addressed. The DepEd shall include, among others, in this midterm report, the following key metrics of access to quality of basic education: participation rate, retention rate, national achievement test results, completion rate, teachers' welfare and training profiles, adequacy of funding requirements, and other learning facilities, including but not limited to computer and science laboratories, libraries and library hubs, sports, music, and arts. Rule number 10. Commitment to international benchmarks. Section 35. Commitment to international benchmarks. The DepEd shall endeavor to increase the per capita spending on education towards the immediate attainment of international benchmarks. Towards this end, the DepEd shall seek to: first, engage local government units to efficiently use the Special Education Fund and other funds to advance and promote basic education. Second, implement programs that will enhance private sector participation and partnership in basic education. And third, propose an annual budget allocation in accordance with these goals. The DepEd shall further develop a multi-year spending plan to ensure the UNESCO prescribed standards on education spending are attained. Rule number 11. Final provision. Section 36. Appropriations. Pursuant to Section 11 of the Act, the initial funding for the operationalization of the Enhanced Basic Education Program shall be charged against the current appropriations of the DepEd. Thereafter, such sums which shall be necessary for the continued implementation of the Enhanced Basic Education Program shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act. Section 37. Implementing details. The DepEd, CHAD, and TESDA may issue such policies and guidelines as may be necessary to further implement this IRR. Section 38. Amendment. Amendments to this IRR shall be jointly promulgated by the DepEd Secretary, CHAD Chairperson, and TESDA Director General. Section 39. Separability Clause. Should any provision of this IRR be subsequently declared invalid or unconstitutional, the same shall not affect the validity and effectivity of the other provisions. Section 40. Repealing Clause. Pursuant to Section 18 of the Act, rules and regulations implementing the pertinent provisions of Batas Pambansa Bilang 232 or the Educational Act of 1982, Republic Act No. 9155 or the Governance of Basic Education Act of 2001, Republic Act No. 9258, Republic Act No. 7836, and all other laws, decrees, executive orders, and rules and regulations contrary to or consistent with the provision of the Act are deemed repealed or modified accordingly. Section 41. Effectivity Clause. These IRR shall take effective 15 days after its publication in the Official Gazette or in 2 newspapers of general circulation. These IRR shall be registered with the Office of the National Administrative Register at the University of the Philippines Law Center, UP Diliman, Quezon City. Done this 4th day of September 2013. To conclude this report, keep in mind that the K-12 system aims to improve Filipino students' mathematical, scientific, and linguistic competence. With the new curriculum, DepEd promised to offer a higher quality education through these tracks for K-12. Each track will give students enough time to master a field and enhance their skills. And as a future teacher, it is important to remember the K-12 features and the implemented rules and regulations under the K-12 curriculum. It is a preparation and it makes us eligible and knowledgeable enough to teach and handle our future students. So here ends our report. On behalf of my group mates, thank you and adios.